I honestly believe that if I was better at this game, or if this game was just generally easier, I would have liked it a lot more. Not because I didn't like the difficulty, but rather that I didn't really get to see all that much of it because I could barely make it to the third level. And yet I remember seeing these PS1 demo discs where they had the video footage like adverts for this game and it showed the late levels and I was interested and I really wanted to play it, but I just wasn't good enough to get to those parts. But even then, what I played was still really good. And this game is Tomb Raider 3, The Adventures of Lara. Yes, the third installment in the Tomb Raider series. I was not able to make it past the jungle stages because it was just so hard. So the old Tomb Raider games, typical series that people say, ooh, it's outdated, it's so clunky and so hard to control. But I think they are talking nonsense because I have no issue controlling these games. I think they control fantastically. Yes, it uses what's known as tank controls, but why does that necessarily mean it's a bad thing? I thought the controls were very good, but the way that this game works in how you get around and what this game added as opposed to previous games, this game does have a sprint button where you can hold down a button and you can run faster, but of course you have a stamina bar, so you can't just run your fastest all the time. And you can also crawl and you can also grab things on the ceiling and sort of swing across on like monkey bars. But yeah, this game does have a lot of persistency, which I really like, and what I mean by that is things such as whatever items you collect in the first level, that's what you carry over to the second level. And what makes this game especially hard is that one of the items that you can carry across are these save crystals, and you have to use save crystals in order to save your game. So you've got a limited amount of saves that you can do, and the game doesn't really tell you that this is a good place to use it, and there aren't specific save spots, so it's not like it's all spaced out for you. No, you just have to use it when you think is the best time to use it. Which I kind of like that, but again, I just felt that this game was too hard. But this game does have a lot of like danger spots as well. Like even just in the first two levels, you will have these snakes that if they bite you, they poison you, and you're pretty much just dead from that point on. And there's also this river in the first level where if you fall into it, well, you're being pushed back to the start of the level. And I really liked that this game had all these environmental hazards, and I really felt that it gave such a really nice scale to the whole thing. Again, even if it was really hard as a result. But since I only was really able to play the jungle levels, I can't comment on much of the game as a whole, but again, of what I did play, I did have a lot of fun with it. And so the main theme of this game, or as it was with Tomb Raider in general, is that you have all of these different areas and it's all based on puzzles. So you've got like levers to pull and different things to interact with the environment, and you have to find your way to be able to get from one place to another or find particular types of treasure. Really good stuff. But two things I want to mention about this game in particular. First of all is that I remember in the second level you would have these areas where it was dark and you'd have these statues that come to life. And I remember like going down this dark corridor being scared about like all these statues coming to life and everything. I remember thinking, oh wow, this is only the second level and we've already got these giant multi-armed statues trying to kill me. And it's just a lot of, I kind of want to say a lot of fun, but that's perhaps not the right word, although it was a lot of fun. But I just loved it. And one thing I really do have to praise this game for is the Lara's home stage, which is usually the tutorial stage that they use for these early Tomb Raider games, where you basically go around and discover the core mechanics. But this time round, I think that this is the best variation of Lara's home that there is, that I've played at least, because the amount of secrets and stuff, from what I remember, is just amazing. Like, it as if it is its own secret level. It presents itself as a tutorial level, like, here's the gym where we will practice how to run and jump. Here's the bit where we'll practice how to climb walls. But if you go into this extra room, there's like this fireplace and you can push the rock in and find this hidden passage. You'll find this area with this giant fish tank, and inside that fish tank is a key, and then that will lead you somewhere else, and that will lead you to this other puzzle. And eventually, once you've done all this, you can unlock the racetrack where you can play around with the go-karts. And I really, really liked that. I thought that was so clever, the way that they sort of hid this level inside this training area. Like they disguised an actual level as a tutorial, which usually people praise the games for being the other way around, where they disguise tutorials inside their natural progression of the level. But this was the other way around, and I loved it. Just having this level that was hidden inside the tutorial. Fantastic. I have mentioned a couple of times in the past how I'm not so much a bigger fan of games where you have very short events that you have to do extremely well at in order to progress. I've mentioned with Sound Shapes and I've mentioned with Super Meat Boy how you basically have to be at a certain skill level in order to complete a level, and if you don't have that skill, you are simply not progressing. I do like a more flexible system where you can be good at one thing and that will benefit you, or you may not be good at something, which means you'll have to make up for that skill in some other means. But this is a game where it does kind of still use that. You still have to be very good at the events, and the events themselves are very short. It requires a lot of direct skill. However, this game also, in the long term, does the scraping thing I was talking about with Infamous First Light, where you try to find where you can scrape a few more points out of bits here and there, which added a sort of long-term element to it, and I really, really like that. So I don't remember specifically if someone told me about this game straight up or I was just interested from the outset. I believe I may have got it from a PS Plus offer, and this was one of the games I played when I got my new TV around summer 2012, around that time. So I was able to see MotorStorm RC on my bigger screen, and granted it's not a massively graphically advanced game, but it was one that I really did enjoy when I got my new TV, my 32-inch TV, because I previously only had, I think it was a 22-inch TV. But this is kind of like the MotorStorm equivalent of Micro Machines. You control these remote control cars, and you control them from a sort of distant view, so you're not directly behind the car as you would be. So again, like with Micro Machines, you have to remember that left and right means left and right relative to the car and not relative to where you're looking. Although saying that, there are different control options where you can make it so that you use the analog stick to determine the direction in which you want the car to turn. So like you can move the analog stick down, and that means that the car will turn to face down, which I suppose if you find it easier that way, then go ahead, but I certainly didn't. There is also the typical RC controls where you can make one analog stick go up and down, that being forwards and backwards, and the other analog stick being to turn left and right. Or you can just have it like a typical racing game where you use one analog stick to turn, and then you can use the shoulder buttons to accelerate and decelerate, although again it's up to you. So on this game you'll have a series of different events, and you'll either get 1, 2 or 3 medals based on the position that you come, and most of the events are just flat out races. There really isn't too much to say, although you will get different events where it's kind of like get the longest drift. And some of these levels can be an absolute pain. I remember some levels I would spend 2 hours starting and restarting trying to get the perfect start. And these are races that could take like 12 seconds total, and I'd be there for 2 hours trying to get them done. But I did it, and there are a set few racetracks, although not a very limited amount of racetracks. There's still a decent variety, but as you go on, what will generally happen is that the cars that you were given will be faster cars. So in the later stages you'll have like these icy levels where you're given sports cars, and it's just crazy. But it's really fun trying to get like the perfect line and trying to control sports cars on ice. It's ridiculous, but ridiculous in a really, really enjoyable way. And when I say that this game does the whole scraping thing that I was talking about before, what I mean by that is that one of the goals is to get your total time below a set threshold. So, I mean, I don't remember what it is, but let's say it's an hour or something, right? that means that your total best time for each of the races has to add up to less than an hour. Which means you'll be looking through all the races and it'll be like, right, okay, I've done this one in 34.12 seconds. Can I knock that down a bit? And then you'll try it, and if you succeed, you might get it down by like a second or so. Like, right, that's 1 second off that. Then you look for something else that you can try to scrape a couple seconds off. I really like that. I'm really a fan of that sort of universal, bigger picture style gameplay, where you're forced to look at the bigger picture and you're forced to think about everything all at once. Where it's not just one level where it's like, oh, I need to do this in 2 less seconds, let's keep trying it, even though that is there, but just this whole thing about looking at all of your high scores and then going around and trying to find the ones where you can get like a couple seconds off this one here, or a couple seconds off that one there. I really, really like that. I remember actually looking up online to see what people would use as a guide, and I remember seeing some races it would be like, okay, for the first race I have this done in 27.2 seconds, and then I'd look at my time and I'd be like, oh yeah, 26.9, I'm already ahead of the game, and then like checking through the rest of them to see where I could possibly scrape off a few seconds. I really, really like that. You may remember the story that I once told about how there was one time where I had only had one PS2 game and I went to Newcastle to see my auntie. And when I was there, I got 2 games and I got the first series of Father Ted on DVD, and I talked about one of those games, which was Dave Mirra's Freestyle BMX 2. I've told you that story. But the other game that I got when I was there was Armored Core 2. Man, I really did like this game, although I really feel like I can't really say much because I've already explained basically when I was talking about Armored Core 3 about how it's all set out. You have this AC, which is your armoured core, and throughout the game you will take on missions that you are given, and as a result of that you will earn money. And the missions will be something like kill all the enemies in this vicinity, or reach this place, and with the money you can buy and sell different parts for your AC. So you have different parts like the head, which will grant you with a better radio, or legs, which will work differently, like you'll have legs that are very slow but they can hold a lot of weight, or legs that are very fast but maybe can't hold a lot of weight. And you have different boosters which will allow you to travel faster and fly in the air, but different types of boosters will have different stats, such as you'll have the ones that will go faster but run out quickly, and you might have the ones where it doesn't run out as quickly but it takes longer to recover if it does run out. You know, different things like that. You'll also get different weapons, including main hand weapons, which are like your guns, and you'll have the shoulder weapons, which are like the missiles that you'll use to lock onto different targets and unleash all of these different missiles and all that lovely stuff. And there's also the sword type weapon, which will just do a short range melee attack. But there is one thing that I really do have to mention when it comes to this game, and that is one of the levels, because I seem to remember one of the levels. I don't know how you're meant to do it. I felt like at the time that it was purposefully impossible in order to just end the game there and then, but without actually ending the game, if you know what I mean. That's probably not the case, but it felt like that at the time, because I remember there was this level where you had all of these little ant robots, and they would scutter around, and they would keep respawning, so I'm led to believe that there's probably a thing that you can destroy that will prevent them from spawning, and that's the whole point of the level. I couldn't find anything like that. I thought you just had to kill all of these ants. But the main gimmick of the level was that your lock-on feature had been disabled, so you couldn't use any missiles or anything. And so I tell you what I did. I equipped the machine gun with the most bullets that I could find. I think it was like 1,000 bullets. And so I would go around and hunt out these ant creature robot things one by one and shoot them with maybe like a few bullets, which is all it took to kill them. So it should be like da-da-da, and then they would die, and then more would come and I'd shoot them and then they would die. And you can't hit these with your sword thing because they're too low down, so that doesn't work. And I ran out of ammo. I used up all of my ammo and they were still coming back, so I was just stuck. I didn't know what to do. I mean, there's probably something out there which is very simple, like you had to destroy this machine which was creating them, but I didn't see anything like that, at least not to my recollection. But that's my strongest memory with Armored Core 2, this one mission that seemed impossible. It was towards the end of 2014 where I figured I should see if there's anything in my Steam library to see if there's something that I should just go ahead and play. And I remember this was also at a time where I made a habit of watching the Co-optional podcast on YouTube. But looking through my Steam library, I found a little game called Anodyne, and I decided, hey, I'm gonna try that out. And my goodness, I am glad that I did. This is a very good game. There is a lot of comparison being made between this and Zelda games, and I can see why. You could sort of say it's kind of like a 2D Zelda game. You are this character called Young, and you attack enemies with a broomstick, the broomstick being your sword, essentially. And you travel from area to area, dungeon to dungeon, in order to progress, and there are also different collectibles and different puzzles and dungeon layouts and all that good stuff. And in true Zelda fashion, you will also find new items along the way that will improve your abilities. And just the basic level design I find very interesting with this game. I am a fan of some of the puzzles. A typical example of an early puzzle would be where you've got things shooting these waves that would hurt you, but using the broom you can pick up these dust balls and you can put these dust balls in different places in order to block off the different waves. And there are also these enemies that you can use to block off different waves as well. Also, as you progress, you will find these items which will upgrade your health, and these are all very easy to find in general. I naturally found all of them. And there were some puzzles, or some areas rather, where I really liked the setup. Like, one common feature that appears later on is that you'll get these speed panels, and if you step on them you can speed up and head in a particular direction. And so you'll have areas where you've got a series of these and you've got to time your jumps correctly and maintain that speed to get around. There is another part that I really like where it's in sort of this hotel type level where you've got this moving platform and then you have to jump off the platform in order to hit something and then jump back on the platform as you go back around. And there are also different collectibles that you can find that take form of these different cards that are scattered around. Really, the only two complaints I have is there's one level where it's kind of like this maze, but it's purposefully been set out to be an annoying maze, if you know what I mean. Like, it does that whole thing of having set square screens and you have to reach the side of the screen for it to transition to the next screen. It's not like constantly tracking your character from the center of the screen. It does have these individual screens that you travel between, and this maze will only reveal a dead end once you've transitioned into a particular screen. So I wasn't very keen on that level. And the only really other thing is the glitches that they added, and this isn't so much of a big deal, but this is something that doesn't really make sense to me. Basically, they kind of made glitches, I don't know if you'd really call them glitches at that point, and they kind of just left them in. So there is a way to, and I'm just putting quotes, glitch through different screens so that you can get to later parts of the level, or rather later parts of the game, quickly. And the idea behind this was that they wanted to keep them in for speedrun purposes. But I don't understand that. Surely it would be more enjoyable to take that out so that you could watch people speedrun through the levels that you've designed? Am I the only one that doesn't get that? And there is also this kind of weapon gadget thing that you can get towards the end of the game where you can switch tiles around. Don't really know what the purpose of that is either. But aside from a couple of minor complaints, this is a game that I can really get behind.